Meeting of the Board Adjustment is now in order for September 20th, 2023.
And then we just go down the list. Yep. So first we'll do a roll call. And if you don't know everybody's name,
I could do that. Yeah.
that'd be great.
Yeah. So Rudham,
Here.
Julik,
Here.
Heffley,
Here.
Norton, and Wieskamp.
Here.
Is that correct, Alan?
That is
Thank
correct.
Next is approval of the agenda. Simple voice vote.
Yeah, what you'll do is you'll ask your fellow board members for a motion to approve the agenda and a second, and then you'll have a voice vote after that. All in favor, say aye. So,
Okay. Anyone
moved.
want to make a
perfect.
motion? So motion's been made and seconded to approve the agenda. Everyone in favor, say aye.
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 Everyone opposed? Agenda is approved. Next order of business is election of a chairperson for the committee. Any volunteers to be chairperson of the committee?
Haven't you been?
Yeah,
Would you like to continue?
I will continue.
All right.
So I heard a
Motion to elect
Mr. Rudham,
Mr. Rudham as chairperson.
I'll second.
perfect.
all in favor of Eric Rudham being chairperson, say aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carries. Next, we will elect a vice chairperson. Anyone want to be vice chairperson?
Is that basically if, for example, you're not here, then in your absence, then the vice chairperson steps in, right?
Exactly
I
right.
believe so. I don't even
Have
know.
fun?
Yeah, I'll continue.
I-
I think
I,
I'll continue
Did
that.
that last time.
Yeah, I think I'll continue that.
A
Yeah.
motion to make Nick Julik the vice chairperson of the Board of Adjustments.
So moved.
All in favor of Nick being the vice chairperson, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Congratulations.
Hooray.
So, next on the agenda is a public comment for anything that's not on the agenda. Is there any public comment? Seeing none. Ryan, any written public comment?
None.
Seeing as there's no public comment, we will move to item 6. It's a public hearing for a conditional use. Request of North Liberty Storage LLC to approve a conditional use for an outdoor self-storage facility on 2.71 acres. The property is located at the southern terminus of North Madison Avenue, proposed Lot 11 of Water Tower Place subdivision. Ryan, could you give us the staff report, please?
Sure can. Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's been a while since we've met. I think the last time we met in February of 2022, you considered a conditional use permit or a conditional use request out at the Colony Pumpkin Patch for when they were to annex into the city. I anticipate, since we don't entertain a lot of variances, you probably, when we do meet, would consider conditional uses. And so this is a conditional use for an outdoor self-storage facility. We list uses in the zoning ordinance based on zoning district as either permitted or conditional, or if it's left blank, it's not permitted at all. Permitted is outright, you can do it. If you meet certain conditions, you need site plan approval. If it's a conditional use, it is discretionary, and it needs approval by this Board of Adjustment. The Planning Commission gets to consider the request and make a recommendation to you. They also consider the site plan, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But as you can see on the screen, the property is zoned C3, which is our higher intensity commercial district. Again, outdoor self-storage facility is listed as a conditional use. The long-range plan and comprehensive plan in the city designates this property as urban high intensity, so the zoning and the land use are consistent. Couple of code references for you. Again, it lists this as a conditional use. And then we have the section pertaining to conditional uses in the ordinance. So prior to any action, public hearing is required. That's what we're doing here. And then it says, upon determination, Planning Commission shall itemize, describe, and justify and record in filing and writing any recommendations, conditions, any recommended conditions to be imposed on the use, along with its general recommendation to approve, amend, or deny the application. After such consideration and recommendation by the commission, that's the Planning Commission, the Board of Adjustment shall have the authority to impose conditions and safeguards as deemed necessary to protect and enhance the health, safety, and welfare of the surrounding area, and authorize a conditional use shall not be made unless evidence is presented to establish that A, such use won't be detrimental to public health, safety, and general welfare of the surrounding area, and the proposed use is necessary or desirable and provides a service or facility that contributes to the general well-being of the surrounding area, and B, such use will comply with the regulations and conditions specified in this code for such use, and I'll go over a few of those points. So here's the site plan. It's what we call a preliminary site plan that's been submitted to the city. It's just under 42,000 square feet of outdoor self-storage facility and 6 buildings. This is a newer development in the city. This was a large development that was acquired by one developer. There's some townhouse development building the streets. Madison will continue south, and 2 public streets will continue east to join to Kansas. There's a commercial strip along the Kansas frontage. Along the Interstate 380 frontage and along the south boundary of the property. They've left that as C3. And the rest is a RM for townhouse and duplex type zoning. So this is generally how the property lays out. I consider Madison Avenue to be a lower traffic street. I think, it's commercial to the north. Gets challenging when you get to what we call the second level of commercial with respect to types of commercial uses. Obviously, the frontages along major roads are the better from a retail or service type use standpoint. As you get to that second level, which this is, it becomes a little more challenging with respect to viability of a commercial use. And I think one example you see is there's a mixed-use building a little bit to the south on Kansas that has commercial space on the first floor and residential above that. Residential is doing wonderful. The first floor commercial has been vacant for several years, and the location is not great from a commercial standpoint. And so we struggle a bit with a viable use for this property. So Mike, on behalf of the property owner, came to us and said, "Hey, what do you think about a self-storage facility on this property?" Admittedly, I think I have a slide here. Sometimes, self-storage facilities get a bad rap, and I'll give you a picture of why. Now, this is actually owned by the applicant, but this was a different era of when self-storage facilities were built. They typically had outdoor storage unit metal buildings with storage buildings that face the public right of way. In this case, our primary corridor along in North Liberty Rancho Way. And so we expressed those concerns to Mike and said, Mike, we're really concerned with not so much Madison because I think it's going to be lower volume, but how it would look, because I-380 as motorists travel up and down, that is kind of our front door. People, how they see and view North Liberty. Hopefully they come into the community, but not always. But so we were concerned of that, and Mike said, hey, let us work with you to come up with a design that we think, and I think the agreed upon goal was to emphasize the form rather than the actual use of the property. And that was kind of the overarching goal that we had. It's hard to see up there, but this is the facade that really faces 380. Has a lot of vertical elevation change, horizontal changes, use of masonry, and actually what you don't see in many of these developments is kind of the use of these faux windows to kind of give that office appearance, as well as landscaping along that side. So that was kind of the goal, is to de-emphasize the use of a self-storage facility and essentially make it look like something else. So that outside wall is kind of a fake wall there. You see fake windows in there and things like that to give that an appearance. This served as the basis for some code amendments, which we are moving through the zoning ordinance right now, that mirror what's happening here. And a lot of times I'm always willing to, well, let me back up a little bit. When the zoning ordinance, how it's been amended largely last year, is all of our uses have standards associated with them, whether they're permitted or conditional use. So it's very easy to add or amend conditions that are associated with every single use. And so what we did was we have currently 3 conditions associated with self-storage units. Self-storage units can't be used for residential occupancy or business, no plumbing connections in these self-storage units. And outdoor storage facilities shall be oriented to the best extent so that doors do not face public right of way. Those standards are applicable whether you're in commercial or industrial. And when I talked to Mike, I said, I think we would want to enhance what those conditions are for the commercial district. And so again, we added conditions that are draft right now. They passed first reading. We will do is hold the site plan, preliminary site plan that they've submitted to the last reading for City Council. And the additional sections are that that outdoor storage doors shouldn't face public right-of-ways or residential districts, and that facades shall not be required to have the masonry. We require 60% masonry in all commercial districts. That didn't make a whole lot of sense when you have internal facing areas that the motorists and the public just don't see. And so we provided relief to that on interior. The exterior of the property would still be subject to that. And then we added conditions that were for specific to commercial districts: color, texture, material change, wall articulation, both vertically and horizontally, and exterior facades that face a public right-of-way. This includes 380 or a residential district, include faux windows. And so again, this is really geared toward enhancing the design. And if we commercial districts, I think this is the appropriate way to go. Obviously, the site plan that they submitted does not show the masonry on the interior portion. Everything that they've submitted right now is voluntary. It's not actually code mandated. So they're providing a design that's above and beyond that would be consistent with what the new code would be, with the exception of the masonry requirement. And so we do provide a recommendation in there that if the ordinance doesn't get approved, then they would be subject to that 60% on all elevations, and they've agreed to that as well. So as I mentioned, the Planning Commission did review this on September the 5th. They reviewed the preliminary site plan that's required for all commercial development in the city, and they provided a recommendation to this board. And the Planning Commission recommended that this board approve the request for conditional use and make it subject to the one condition that is recommended by city staff. It's verbatim. And so there are 2 findings. The number 1 is that the outdoor storage facility use would not be detrimental to the health, safety, and welfare of the surrounding area, and contributes to the general welfare of the of the surrounding area. And the outdoor storage unit, with conditions imposed, would comply with the regulations and conditions specified in the zoning ordinance. So staff does recommend you accept those 2 listed findings and approve the conditional use, subject to that one condition of the 60% masonry if that ordinance is not approved. And I've provided a recommendation in there. Now, again, this is just staff recommendation. As I mentioned in the ordinance, you are empowered to impose additional conditions if you see fit. And that's part of the purpose that we're here. But that's the staff analysis of it, of how we got to where we are in those conditions. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Time for the applicant presentation. If you'd like to come up and state your name and give a presentation.
I'm Mike Bales with Urban Acres Real Estate, and I'm here on behalf of the developers Donovan Holdings and the applicant of the self-storage, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you.
Oh, and I'm sorry, I failed to mention, with respect to this particular application, we received no public input.
The next portion on your agenda, if you don't have any questions for Mr. Bales, is listed as public comments, but this is actually going to be a public hearing. And so what you're going to announce is you're opening a public hearing,
Okay.
and then receive any public comments that might be here for that public hearing. Then you'll close the public hearing and move on to the next agenda item.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Any questions for the applicant's representative right now, or we can ask questions in D as well, right?
This is the part where you talk to
Okay.
the applicant, and then after you'll have a public hearing. If anyone wants to barge in and say stop the presses, you'll listen to what they have to say. Lastly, questions and comments are going to be typically among yourselves.
Okay.
You discuss what's been presented, but the closure of the public hearing is the closure of the evidence that's been presented to you. Is the best practice.
Okay.
No one will probably come in here and have a real problem if you ask Mike a couple questions after the fact, but they should be specific questions that are facilitating the discussion you guys are having. Does that make sense?
Sounds good. Thank you. Any questions for the applicant or applicant's representative?
I did. I was curious. I'm very bad at maps. So can you say where this would be, where this storage unit would be put
Yeah.
in?
Yep. So,
Over on like that side?
so it'd be just south of
Okay.
Penn and
Mhm.
I-380. So there's a map up there. I'm not sure if you can see it, but there's the Jungie Automobile, the Casey's. As soon as you go south on Kansas and then take a right on Madison, you got the Jungie Casey's and then the Jungie and then the Sleep Inn Hotel.
Oh,
And then there's a dead end right there.
Okay.
And then all of the earth moving development that's going on. Is a very large 30,
Just under 40 acres.
40
So
acre
this
development.
is on the way towards, I'll just say North Bend, the elementary school,
Yeah.
and towards Centennial Park then?
Yeah.
Okay. And so that is the business area. So basically you're saying the bottom is vacant and then up on top are the apartments. And so those are full, but the bottom is.
Well, so I was talking about a different development. So if you
Okay.
if you go south
Okay,
on
that's where I'm
Kansas,
confused.
if you go
Okay.
south on Kansas, there is what I was alluding to is that it's challenging what I call a second level of commercial.
Okay.
So commercial in these spots. So what you could see there, if you see the circle, the white circle there below the black area, which is a pond, and then that street that comes down is Kansas Avenue. And then the area that's kind of hatched in blue next to the interstate is where the property is actually located.
That building, the condo complex that caught on fire. Do you know what I'm talking
Oh,
about?
yeah, I think I do. Okay.
It's
so,
like right across the street from that.
okay. So it's definitely off the road. Like you,
Yeah, we're way
you're
off of
not-
Kansas.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so right when you get off.
So it's
the
way
interstate.
over here.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so this is right across from that, and the area that they're talking about is over here.
Over there. Okay. So, and this is a different location than that's up in the picture earlier. Sorry.
That's okay.
That was up in the picture on, I think, page 5. That's off of Renshaw Way. Right?
Yeah, so this example here is, but much different location. And I just kind of wanted to show you kind of what I think is the evolution of
Right. Of what?
when cities mandate it, right? I think if you ask a developer, would you like, if we would let you build this, they'd probably say yes. But I think with the evolution of self-storage facilities, we get into better design standards.
Right.
Were these expectations set for that other self-storage location just to the north of that?
They were not.
They just did that?
You have the masonry requirement.
Right.
And they were not. So you had some general design standards, and Kevin Kidwell is, I think, a very good partner in the city. I think Kevin he wants to be proud of his self-storage facilities. And so, he created that, going above and beyond with the mason requirement to make it look nice. And
Sure.
And can you explain what that really means, the masonry requirement of 60%? What is that?
Yeah, so any elevation below the roof line has to be a masonry component. So it's boy, Alan, you could probably describe this better than me, but I'm going to try. It's basically a wall elevation with with a narrow masonry unit attached to it. It is the predominant development material that you see in the city of North Liberty because of that requirement.
And then elevation is an exterior wall.
Okay.
So instead of having aluminum or vinyl siding, like
It's-
most of us
right,
have our houses,
right,
it would
it's
be
brick.
Brick,
Yeah, so if
Right.
you look at this
Okay.
picture,
Yeah.
this is probably the best explanation
Right.
of what the
That's what us
60% of this
is
frontage,
covered in
yeah.
brick or
or
Yeah.
some
Okay.
sort of mason.
and that has been
okay.
waived on this one because there's a new ordinance coming forward.
Okay.
So,
So
if we can waive that,
okay.
but the condition that was suggested is if that ordinance does not pass the city council,
Okay.
then this would be subject to the 60%.
Okay.
Yeah, and I
as
would
the existing ordinance states.
I would advocate strongly that you would adopt that condition. Certainly, you can add more, but failing to adopt that condition, you're actually approving something that's not consistent with code, and we would need a variance to do that. That's not what's been requested.
Mhm.
And so
Okay.
that's why we reach out to the developer and say, hey, we need to have this as a condition. We're very confident that the ordinance
Right.
will get approved, but failing, if it doesn't, you'd have to
Right.
build to the 60%. And they said, yep, that's no problem.
And so, for example, then the plan that they were showing, that's in the packet, that's showing all the brickwork or masonry work, that is something that is being planned. If everything is approved, that is the design that you're going with, basically.
Correct.
Okay.
And is this because the expectation is that this is on the exterior but not on the interior facing, right? So I'm assuming that would be like the west facing, the east facing, and the south facing
That's
of
right.
each one of those exterior buildings,
Yep,
like on the outside,
correct.
right? That's what I
Yeah,
figured. Okay.
that was my question, Ryan. As I'm looking at the plan, it appears the west face to 380 and then the east to Madison. You can see in the plan that that's where the design is, but the south looks, if I'm reading this correctly, it looks like it's just a fence. And that was my question, is that going to have any requirements? Because it says street frontage and not necessarily what's facing your neighbor.
Correct. So it'll require the 60% masonry on the north. And so if you look at the diagram, it'll just be the ends of the building that face to the north, and then the end of the building that's adjacent to I-380, and then the south elevation of the
That's what I figured.
of the building on
Okay.
the south. Now that'll be mostly a masonry or window. Or, I'm sorry, overhead doors and things like that. Now the only area because we have commercial zoning to the south, they aren't the additional requirements of like the faux windows
Oh,
and the articulation and things like that. Had that been a residential development to the south, that's
Then it
where the
would.
additional.
Different.
Yeah.
Okay,
that makes sense.
that, you got to my next question. You beat me to it. So,
Yep.
all right.
Yeah, that's something we did talk about, and that made sense to us. Is if you commercial to commercial, you have less of those design standards.
So if you're standing just south of the lot, you'll be looking at some sort of a fence, and then you'll
I
be
don't
able
think
to
there's
see.
a fence, is there, Mike?
There's an elevation of it on the drawing.
Oh, I missed that then.
I think he was doing some type of fence.
I'd imagine you'd have some kind of fence if it's a self-storage space.
Mhm.
Oh, that was it. Okay, the wrought iron type.
Yeah, there's
Yep.
gonna be fence and then
Yep.
some landscaping.
Okay, so if you look between the landscaping, you can see the doors to the self storage, but they're facing another C3, so that's still within our
Right.
ordinances.
That's right.
Yeah, because that whole south end, those are all units that they can be accessed. So obviously, there's going to be doors there.
Yeah.
Right.
And then, is there a wall? There's no wall between the existing North Liberty storage and this. It's going to be one kind
Yeah.
of common area with a 12-foot drive between them.
That's correct.
Okay.
And this kind of takes away the need to do a direct frontage to. There's one to the south, but I think on the north they have like kind of an office drive up and parking, so you didn't need that kind of general public parking. They would go all park up there. So these would just be customers coming directly to the site.
Any other questions for the applicant?
No.
Okay, we will move on to a public hearing. So I will now formally open the public hearing. If anyone has any comments, please come to the podium, give us your name and your comments, please. The public hearing is now closed with no comments of record. Next is questions and comments for the board. Anyone have any questions and/or comments right now?
No.
None.
Yeah, I think, looking through this and looking at the what Ryan put in here, they're matching an existing self-storage to the north of it. So certainly anything north is 100% consistent with what we're doing. This would be 100% consistent with what's there. Looking to the west, where you see getting off the highway and kind of get introduced to North Liberty, and it's has the aesthetic appeal that we want as a city, and the east other public facing side as well. The south side is meeting another adjoining district that's also C3. So from a public perception standpoint, it's going to be less visible. So, overall looking at it, I don't see how this would be detrimental to health, safety, or general welfare of the surrounding area. It's not going to be a heavily trafficked area. It provides a service or a facility that contributes to the general well-being of the surrounding area. Certainly not negative to that. And with the conditions imposed, it'll comply with the regulations and conditions specified in the zoning ordinance. So I don't see any reason that it can't be approved based on that. With the exception that since there is a zoning ordinance that's on its way through approval but not there yet, we can waive the 60% masonry requirements, assuming that it passes. But then if we can put that into the recommendation that if the ordinance doesn't pass, then the 60% masonry requirements of the existing ordinances will be enforced, and there will be likely a design change that the applicant needs to do.
And Mr. Rudham, I would represent to you that condition, as you phrase it there, would satisfy the second prong of the requirement of the code.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would note that what you see up on the screen is we break the process down into preliminary approval, and then once this is approved, assuming it is approved, the second phase would be the engineering and the construction and the actual building. What I call spending real money on this. Then that happens, so we'd be doing a consistency check on what's all approved.
Any other comments or questions? Any motions?
I think I provided a recommendation. Again, you can add conditions if you want to. I do believe I provided a recommendation to you to make your life a little bit easier in the packet if somebody wishes to make a motion.
Motion. This one here, the suggested one. So, well, I'll move then. I'll move that the Board of Adjustment accept the two listed findings and approve the conditional use subject to the condition recommended by the city staff.
I second that.
There's been a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please, Ryan.
Julik,
Aye.
Heffley,
Aye.
Rudham,
Aye.
and Wieskamp.
Aye.
Motion has passed. The conditional use has been approved. Next item is approval of the previous minutes. Can I get a motion on that?
So moved.
Second?
I second that.
That's been motioned and seconded to approve the previous minutes. Everyone in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carries. Ryan, is there any old business?
There is not.
Ryan, is there any new business?
There is not.
Can I get a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second?
Second.
Well, second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Meeting is adjourned.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, folks.